We've got what we feel is a great topic today. We're going to be talking about entity structuring. Really, that's how to protect yourself as an individual, protect your assets, and of course, protect your business as well. There are multiple types of these entities based on really the size of the business, the function of them, and your specific needs. There's also states out there that are a little bit more friendly than others based on protection, based on taxes, based on regulation. So we're going to really kind of lay those out for you as well. Let's go ahead and start off by talking about the different types of entities that are available, and then we'll dive into the pros and cons of each. I'm going to start with the important advantages of a corporate structure or a corporate entity for your business. The first and most obvious is just going to be limited liability, and what that simply says is that you as the owner are not going to be held personally responsible for any debts, obligations, or liabilities that the company may have. It's kind of that corporate veil, if you will. The second is going to be perpetual existence, and what that simply means is that owners, officers, shareholders, as they come and go or leave the company is still going to be able to do business as it is today. This means that the corporation is a much safer place, particularly if you're trying to raise capital from an investor standpoint. It's going to make them feel a lot safer and a lot more secure with where they're putting their money. The next is going to be professional management, and what professional management means is that the owners and the operators of whatever entity or whatever company or corporation it happens to be are obviously very knowledgeable within that industry and within whatever that vertical happens to be. So they are absolutely knowledgeable and in most cases experts in their field. The next is going to be expansion potential, and what that means is that whatever good or service that company is able to provide is teachable. You can have that kind of knowledge transfer, as I like to call it, as you're hiring in new employees. So and ultimately that can lead to scalability. Transferability of shares would be another advantage of it, meaning as new shareholders come on board, new employees come on board, you're able to take the same amount of shares, ultimately either dilute them down or divide them up amongst the other newcomers to the table. And that transferring of existing shares can either be done by gifting them or by selling them. Also, diffusion of risk would be an advantage of having a company setup or a corporate setup, and that simply means that all of the players that are involved in it, there's kind of that distribution of risk along the way so that it's not falling on the shoulders of one person in particular. And this is a distinct advantage for smaller investors. And now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the disadvantages of such. And there's only just a couple of them. Number one is going to be lack of secrecy. Basically, this means that people are going to be able to look in your shorts or look under the hood. There's some regulations involved, and depending on what entity you ultimately decide to do, there are disclosures to financial institutions. There are disclosures to certain governmental institutions, and depending on if you've got shareholders, there will be information that's given to them based on earnings and other important facets of the company. So that secrecy veil really does kind of come down when you are forming a corporation, because there are going to have to be disclosures to multiple entities. Number two would be restrictions. Simply put, corporations, entities have to follow specific legal guidelines. Number three, and this would be a big one, this would be a potential downfall of it, would be mismanagement. In any type of company or corporation, there is that ability or that disadvantage that someone that is in that kind of higher up role might be able to take those funds and misuse them for personal use. And you hear those stories all the time. People can get in big trouble for that, especially if it's a public company and they're kind of using that as their own personal piggy bank, if you will. But that fund mismanagement is certainly a drawback. Number four would be lack of personal interest. Of course, as a business owner, if you're starting a company or building a business, which I've done multiple times, it kind of becomes your baby, if you will. It's this, living, breathing organism, and you kind of eat, sleep, and breathe it. And of course, there's no one that's got a bigger vested interest in the success of that company. Well, as you grow, obviously, you're not going to be a one-man show at that point. You're going to have to bring in management, people underneath the management, and without them having that ownership interest in it, they don't have the same desires. They don't have the exact same drive. That psychology sometimes can lead to losses. It can lead lead to mistakes. They may not be as thorough as you were when you started the company, and that lack of ownership can sometimes lead towards those end results, which can be obviously very negative, and sometimes they can be catastrophic for companies. So now that we know that there are obviously distinct advantages and disadvantages with corporations and entity structuring, let's take a look at the different types of them. We'll break them down, and based on that, you'll be able to make a determination on which one may be the best fit for you based on a number of factors. Now, there are three types of entities that we're going to talk about today, and these are just really the most simple and basic definitions by the SBA, the Small Business Association. Number one is going to be a sole proprietorship. Now, a sole proprietorship is the most common and the most basic kind of business startup entity that you're going to be able to utilize out there. It has no differentiation between the business itself and the owner. Number two is going to be a partnership, and this is going to be a formal arrangement between two or more individuals that are also going to share in the profits, the day-to-day operations, and the oversight of said business. So in that partnership business, all partners are going to share in profits, and they're also going to share in the same liabilities. The third type is going to be a corporation, or a C Corp as it can be called, and this is going to definitely differentiate between the company itself and the individual owners. Corporations can make a profit, be taxed, and also be liable. And unlike sole proprietorships or partnerships, these corporations will actually pay taxes on their profits. Now, based on that, how do you know which one is going to be the best for you? We're going to start with that sole proprietorship, whereas in one individual is responsible for all profits and all debts. And per Deborah Sweeney, who's the CEO of my corporation, if you want to be your own boss and run a business from home without a physical storefront, a sole proprietorship allows you to be in complete control. This entity does not offer the separation or protection of personal and professional assets, which could prove to become an issue later on as your business grows and more aspects hold you liable. Now, some of the advantages of this entity are, number one, it's an easy setup. Very easy to get these off of the ground, get them registered. Number two, there's a very low cost associated with that. Number three, there are obvious and important tax deductions that you get to take advantage of with this structure. And number four, it's also a very easy exit. It's easy to get these and come on board and open these up. If times change, life throws you a curveball, you're no longer active or want to be involved in this business, it's really easy to really cancel these out, and that exit strategy is just not a hard one. Number two would be a partnership. And according to Sweeney again, the entity is ideal for anyone who wants to go into business with a family member, for example, a friend or business partner, like running a restaurant or an agency together. A partnership allows the partners to share profits and losses, make decisions together within the business structure. Remember that you will be held liable for the decisions made as well as those actions made by your business partner. And here are some of the advantages of that partnership. One, again, it's easy to form. Two, it's perfect for growth potential. And three, special taxation. So you would be paying state and federal taxes, but typically you're not paying income tax with this. Number three would be an LLC. Most of you out there have probably heard of that. That's a limited liability corporation. And according to Brian Cairns, who's the CEO of Pro Strategics Consulting LLC, a limited liability company is created to provide business owners with the liability protection that corporations enjoy while allowing earnings and losses to pass through to the owners as income on their personal returns. LLCs can have one or more members, and profits and losses do not have to be divided equally among those members. Number four would be a corporation. The law regards a corporation as a separate entity from its individual owners. It has its own legal rights independent of its owners. It can sue, it can be sued, it can own and sell property, and sell the rights of ownership in the form of stock. And within corporations, there are going to be several subsets. The first is going to be a C Corp. The second is going to be an S Corp. There's also a B Corp. There is a nonprofit corporation. There are closed corporations, and there are also open corporations. These business entities are typically reserved for large companies. Once you get to a certain growth point, you get to a certain amount of revenue, it's going to be suggested that you're going to take a hard look at becoming one of these different types of corporations. We can dive into those on another episode. There's a lot of intricacies and ins and outs on those. Really just want you to be aware that there's multiple. So if you are looking at doing a corporation, for example, just know within that there are going to be those multiple subsets that I just discussed. Now let's talk about some some of the things that would really fall under the auspices or under the realm of a corporation. The first is going to be limited liability again. Stockholders are not going to be personally reliable for the actions, whether they're good and the bad, of the corporation. So from that standpoint, the investor is only liable for their own investment. The next is going to be continuity. Corporations are not going to be affected by the death or the transferring of shares by their shareholders. Your business operates indefinitely, which is preferred by investors, creditors, and consumers. Number three is going to be capital. If you ever have intention of raising capital, this entity is going to be the one that's going to be most preferred by investors. Now let's talk about the factors that you should consider when deciding which entity structure you would like to start. For businesses that could fall into two or more of these categories, sometimes there's definitely some decisions, and I wouldn't necessarily call them hard ones, but there's definitely going to be some decisions that have to be made. A lot of people are really just going to fall into one of these very naturally, very easily, but if you would fit maybe the mold of two or more of these, then there's going to be some decisions you're going to have to make on your side. You're going to have to consider your company's startup needs, because it can really be difficult to change your legal structure for this entity once you've already gotten it started. So as always, do your homework and don't be afraid, and we certainly would encourage you to take advice from your CPA. Now let's talk about how and why you would consider opening or transferring one of these entities to a different state, which is very, very commonplace. The two biggest reasons for you to move your entity to a different state come down to liability protection and convenience. For most businesses that are not in-state licensed only, you do have the ability to open entities outside of the state that you actually operate in. That's why you'll hear people that have a Florida business, but they are licensed in Delaware or in Nevada. Those are going to be states where people are often incorporating in because they have very business-friendly laws there, and we're going to talk about those here in just a second. And this protection that these corporations or these entities are supposed to be able to protect your assets with is what's called the corporate veil. And it's one of the reasons you really want to incorporate in the first place. You really want that protection. You don't want to worry about losing your car or your house or your assets if any of your business dealings were to go wrong. They cannot come after you personally. Now, there are going to be some exceptions to that, and I'm going to talk about California right now. So in California, which is a very consumer-friendly or consumer-driven state, about 25 to 50% of the time, if your business dealings do go wrong, they're going to go right through your corporate veil and just come after you personally. And they can also come after other shareholders, other people that would be in that entity or the partnership, for example. They can actually go right through your corporate veil 25 to 50% of the time on average, and results may vary just based on the specifics of what business dealings went wrong. But in a state like California, it is not business friendly. They can often pierce the veil and come right after you personally. So states like New York and states like California have very non-friendly business laws. However, states like Delaware, Wyoming, New Mexico, Nevada, they've got very, very friendly business laws and courts that will really help you protect yourself as an individual, of course your assets, and frankly protect your officers and your directors as well. Incorporating in another state can be really great, but it depends on the type of business and really the specific needs. If you want privacy, for example, incorporate New Mexico. If you want protection, incorporate in any of the states that I mentioned, but specifically Nevada and Delaware from a protection standpoint. And if you want to save money, which a lot of people do, of course, take a hard look at Wyoming. Also, more than ever right now, it's very important for you to be aware of any upcoming changes in your personal or potential business taxes, as they can play a very, very key role in your decision-making process. If you like the content that you've seen today on this video and you want to see more like it, please smash that like button. If you're not a subscriber already, we would love to have you as a subscriber on our channel. And as always, hit that notification bell if you want to see more content like this. Until next time, take care and make it a great day.